Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jeff Doyle. Well, I was driving with my 22-year-old son, Mac, and we were on our way to Ann Arbor. We were on our way to go to the Moth Storytelling. And for those of you who don't know, the Moth is a competitive storytelling event where you go and throw your name in a hat for a chance to be drawn and tell a 5-minute story on a theme. And tonight's, the theme that night was confusion, and Mac and I were going down there, and I was kind of excited to be having Mac go with me because for the past couple of years, our relationship had been a little bit strained, and 22, it was tough to find stuff that we would want to do in common, but he wanted to do this with me, so I was pretty geeked about it. And he asked me on the way down there, he says, "Dad, are you going to tell a story?" And I said, "No, not tonight." And he said, "Well, why not?" He says, "I know you were working on a story," because I had told him I was. And I said, yeah, I was working on a story, and I was kind of excited about it. I had like 3 versions going, but I can't tell it tonight. And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, frankly, Mac, it's because the story is about you. And I'm not sure that I would be able, I don't think it would be fair for me to tell it, and I don't know that I could get through it on stage." And he looked kind of puzzled, and I said, "But I would like to tell you the story." And he nodded okay. So I said, "Well, it's called The 5 Wishes. I went to the doctor the other day to get my physical. I'm 51 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was kind of excited about going to the doctor because in the past year, I had lost 20 pounds. I had done all the things the doctor told me to do. I had lost 20 pounds. I was eating right. I was exercising for the first time in my life on a regular basis, and I thought maybe he'd give me some praise for that, but he just did his normal poking and prodding. And then when I went to check out, 51 years old, they gave me a brochure to take home with me, and I didn't pay much attention, but when I got home, it fell out on the kitchen table, and it was called The 5 Wishes. And I thought, well, that's funny. You get 5 wishes, that's great. And then I started to look at the brochure, and I found out these were 5 end-of-life wishes. And I'm thinking about that, and I thought, these are death wishes. Charles Bronson made 5 death wish movies. A coincidence? I don't think so. So I start to look them up, and, the first wish was the person I wish to make life decisions for me, end-of-life decisions, if I am incapacitated and cannot make the decisions for myself. And I immediately wrote down Mac, I really wrote down Mom, you're my wife, and well, then I got to thinking about that. And I thought, shit, that's a bad idea. What if she's mad that day or pissed off? She leans over and whispers in my ear, "Nice to know you, honey." And then there was the wish about how comfortable you'd want to be. I wish to have daily baths. Well, yeah, that'd be nice. And then I wish to have the sheets changed if I soil them. Well, no shit. And then I wish to have hot oil massages as frequently as possible. Yeah. And I'm thinking, let's put in some Victoria's Secret models in there. I mean, if we're wishing. So I searched the other wishes for comedic value, and then I came to the final wish, and it said the final wish was, What do you wish for your loved ones to know when you're dead? And I thought, why? Why would I wait? Why the hell would I wait till I die to let them know what I think? That's crazy. And I thought, well, I'm a pretty straight up guy. I pretty much let everybody know what I'm thinking. I wear my emotions on my sleeve most of the time. And then I thought about my dad. And, my dad and I had this great relationship, Mac, your grandpa. And, I handled his death pretty well, mostly because I knew where he stood. He knew where I stood. We talked to each other all the time. We talked about everything. We talked about relatives, politics, sex, money, mostly relatives. He liked to talk about that. But he was one of my best friends. And then I started to think about other people in my life that I cared about. And Mac, that's when I thought about you, and I started to think there's some, our relationship has just not been quite right over the last couple of years. And there's some things that I should set straight. And then I said, Mac, I will never forget when you came home that Thanksgiving 2 years ago and you handed us that letter. And the thing you should know about Mac was that when he was a junior at Michigan State University, he came home on Thanksgiving break and he gave us this letter. And then he left the room and we opened the letter. And it said that Mac said that he was dropping out of college, that he hadn't been to class in 4 weeks, that he was failing all of his classes, and that he was seeing a counselor, and that he was suffering from depression. Depression. Well, I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand. I was, a little confused, and I was upset. I mean, I thought he had everything going for him. If you looked, he had a great grade point average. He was a resident assistant in the dorm. He was helping lead other young people. He had this great group of friends. He had a longtime girlfriend. And I just thought this was everything. And then the father in me took over, and I thought, that's a half a year's tuition at a major university wasted. An opportunity wasted. And all because he couldn't get up and go to class? And I stared straight ahead, and Mac did too, because that's what men do when they're talking about something serious. And I said, Mac, I know that it was probably the bravest thing that you have ever done was to give us that letter. But I have to tell you that it turned your depression in that letter turned your mom and my life upside down. It turned all of our lives upside down. And it wasn't that we hadn't dealt with depression in our family before, but others had been treated with prescription drugs and seemed to kind of muddle through life. And it was just something that was hard. It was hard to understand. Well, he gave us the letter, and then he moved in with us, and our journey began. And Mac was in the basement, and he, most days he was either playing Magic, which is a card game that very intelligent people play, or he was online playing video games, and he would play video games until the middle of the night, and he would sleep most of the day. Mac. And then you did get a job, but But then there was the counseling appointments, and then the missed counseling appointments, and then the therapy sessions. And then I would get a bill for a therapy session that had been missed, $50. And I would get angry. And then one day he was depressed, and he couldn't get up and go to work, and there were several days like that, and I would be like, the father of you. It was like, I get up and go to work, your mom gets up and goes to work, and we're providing a car for you, and you're living in our basement, and it was hard. And then there was the doctors. And, he was seeing a psychiatrist and a counselor, and after a year of seeing them, they decided he was suffering from anxiety. And I'm like, it takes a year, which is logical, but it takes a year to figure that out? And then 8 months later, he's suffering. They decided he was suffering from ADHD. I'm like, do these people have a clue what is going on? And I'm like, Mac, I know that I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I know that you internalize what I'm thinking or feeling. And though I don't say it, I know you feel it. But what I want to say to you is that sometimes I feel helpless too. It's so helpless that I went and I have a friend named Jennifer, and she has a son who suffers from chronic migraines, and he lives at her house, and he's 30 years old. And I went to Jennifer and I said, Jennifer, what do I do? My son is at home, and it's really hard. And she says, oh, Jeff, she says, you don't know how fortunate you are. You don't know how fortunate you are. I've known many kids like Mac that are 20, 22, 25 years old that come home and suffer from depression, and after a while they mature and they grow and they get the right drugs figured out and they leave the house. He said, my son Nate has a chronic condition. He will never get rid of these. He may live with me for the rest of my life. And I thought, yeah. And then she said, you don't understand how lucky Mac is. Mac is so lucky that he has these wonderful, supportive parents like you, and that your job is support him and to be behind him no matter what and to cheer him on. Mac. And it was at that moment that I realized what a monumental asshole I've been. I was here. Well, I was supposed to be supporting you and doing this. I have been judgmental and pushy. I came from a different time where you were told to suck it up and move on and you can do this. And that's what I was operating at. And I told Mac, I said, the fifth wish. I said, the fifth wish, what I want you to know before I die. And I have tears coming down my eyes, and Mac has tears coming down his cheek. And I said, I want you to know that I love you and that I'm proud of you. And I want you to know why. Because you are loving and caring. And I love you because you have this wonderful sense of humor. And I'm so proud that you are a musician and a writer, and you have the soul of an artist. And I love the way you spend time with your little sister. You counsel her, you care about her, you even when you're suffering, you take her in. I love, and I'm so proud that you've held a job, and even though you've had anxiety and you've had depression, that you have held a job for 2 years. And one of the greatest things about you, Mac, is ever since you were a little kid, you stood up for the underdog. You have always been there. And your friend John, who suffers from depression way worse than yours, you were the first one to call him, the first one to invite him over, the first one to let him sleep on our couch and counsel him. That's beautiful. And I have to tell you, Mac, when you first came home and you said you were depressed, your mom and I didn't tell anyone because we thought we were protecting you. But the truth of the matter is, I was embarrassed. And I'm ashamed to say that I did not want anyone to know, because I thought they might think I was a bad parent. But I also want you to know that I am no longer ashamed or embarrassed. I'm proud. Mac, I am so proud of you that you have stuck with fighting depression and anxiety, and no matter how bad it gets, you get up swinging every time, and that counts so much, because I cannot imagine if you didn't. Mac, there is a line of people, your grandparents, your family, friends, that are behind you, that support you. And I will love you and support you and be behind you 100% until I die. And he said, I don't know what to say. And I said, you don't have to say anything. And it took us about 5 more minutes to get to Ann Arbor, staring out opposite window. And when we got to the parking lot, he opened the door and he came around and he hugged me. And he whispered in my ear for 3 minutes, "Thank you." And then I didn't know what to say. But I knew at that moment that in a 20-minute car ride and a 10-minute conversation that I had changed forever my relationship with my son. We went to the Moth. I did not tell a story. We had a couple of beers. We listened to stories. We went home. 3 days later, my wife Colleen asked me, "What the hell is going on?" Something had changed. And I told her the story. And since that day, Mac has been more open. He's come up from that basement and we have conversations and family meals and we share a beer together. And he went out and sought a new job. He got a new girlfriend. And he's a different person. All because he knows that behind him are 2 people that will stand there no matter what. So the 5 wishes granted me 1 additional wish. A beautiful new relationship with my son. Thank you.
Jeff Doyle, ladies and gentlemen.